We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 35b. On the previous Amud, Rava said that the source for the idea that when it comes to Malkus, we say that in a situation of Malkus, even if it's a theoretical situation of Malkus, we're going to say that there's no payment, comes from the fact that we compare it to Make Behema. Just like it talks about Make Behema, we make no distinctions whether it's Beshogeg, Bemezid, etc. So too when it talks about a case of a situation where a person wounds his friend, so over there also it happens through a Make, it happens through striking the person, so that is a comparison, and we understand that it doesn't make any difference how it is done, b'shogeg, b'mezid, etc. The person is going to be pater from tashlumin. And the Gemara understood on the previous Amud that the pasuk that we're specifically referring to is a pasuk where a person wounds his friend less than a shavapruta, and therefore there is malchus involved. And again, that's what we're understanding. In a case where there's malchus involved, whether or not the malchus is administered, the person will be pater from payment. But the Gemara says, 1 second, sof, at the end of the day, lav bar tashlumin, if we're understanding the pasuk to mean that the damage was less than a pruta, there is no payment there anyway. So of course you're exempt from payment. So how does that teach us that in a case where you have malchus and payment, you're exempt from payment, whether you get the malchus or not? In this case, there's no payment anyhow if the damage was less than a shavapruta. As Rashi over here says, sof, hailo tachlok bo l'chayvo mamun, taimo mishum de'ein bo kadei tashlumin. Of course you don't pay because there is nothing to pay for. V'lo mishum hakesh, it has nothing to do with the hekesh to the case of make behema yishal mena. Aval hecha diyesh bo shavapruta ema tachlok. Maybe if there would be a case where again the damage would be a shavapruta, maybe again you would have to pay, and so therefore this is not a good source. And so the Gemara answers, lo no tzricha, we need it as follows. The case was that he struck the person. The damage to the person's body was less than a shavapruta, but he also tore some of his garments. He tore some of his silk, some of his clothing, and therefore in that case there was a damage that in theory he should pay for, and that is the chiddush. The chiddush is, since there is malchus involved over here, whether he receives the malchus or not, he's going to be pater on the payment. Rashi over here says, here's what the comparison is for. And again, when he hit him, he also tore the clothes. And the chiddush is exactly this. He gets malchus because of the wound, because of the chavala. And he does not have to pay for tearing the clothing. It doesn't matter whether he was warned to get malchus or even if he wasn't warned and he doesn't actually receive the malchus. Even if he doesn't actually get the malchus, he's pater from paying Kesha to lo tachlok. Again, from this hekesh that we don't make distinctions between shogeg and mezid, etc. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Chia l'Rava, Rav Chia said to Rava, U'letana devei Chizkiya, according to the Tana devei Chizkiya on the previous Amud, the Amar Make Adam u Make Behema, who again he learned out from a comparison between Make Adam and Make Behema. Mimai devechol ksiv, how do you know this pasuk is talking about a situation where, let's say, he killed the animal on a weekday? V'leka lefluge, and then the assumption is there's no distinction no matter how you kill the animal, whether it was b'shogeg, whether it's b'mezid, you're going to pay. And by Make Adam again, it doesn't matter whether it's b'shogeg, whether it's b'mezid, it makes no difference whether there's a death penalty or not. We said you're going to be pater from paying money. But how do you know that's the case? Dilma b'Shabbos ksiv. Maybe this pasuk is talking about killing an animal on Shabbos, which is a violation of Shabbos. Then by the animal itself, we do make a distinction. If you were to kill the animal on Shabbos b'mezid, so then you'd be chayiv the death penalty, you would not pay money. And maybe the pasuk, when it says you pay for killing the animal, is only when you do it b'shogeg. On the contrary, only when there is no death penalty, there is a distinction between whether the death penalty is administered or not, and then we would make the distinction by Make Adam as well. And so to that, the Gemara says, Lo salka daitach, don't think that the pasuk is talking about on Shabbos, because the pasuk says, Umake behema yishal mena, Umake Adam yumas. It says again, you strike the animal, you're going to pay money. You strike a person, then you're going to get the death penalty. So hechi dami, what exactly is the case in this pasuk? Idalo asrube, if there was no warning at all, Make Adam ama yumas. Why would a person who strikes a person get the death penalty without a warning? You only get the death penalty with a warning. Elapshi, that the asrube, obviously the pasuk is talking about where there was a proper warning. V'i b'Shabbos. Now, if this happened on Shabbos, and let's say the person killed the animal with a proper warning, so Make behema yishal mena, do you think you're going to pay money for striking the animal? No, you're going to get the death penalty. El alav b'chol. Rather, it is clear, is it not? We're talking about on a weekday, and that's the whole point. On a weekday, no matter what happens, whether it's b'shogeg, b'mezid, etc., you're going to pay money for the animal. And on a weekday, no matter what happens, whether you receive the death penalty or not, you are not going to pay money when the person kills another person. And the Gemara Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Papa li Abaya. Rav Papa said to Abaya, Le Rabba, according to Rabba's opinion, this is referring to Rabba on the previous daf, Rabba said, the Amar, that he said, Chidish hu shechid Torah b'knas. There's a chidish anytime you have a situation of a knas payment, v'af agav de mikdal mishalim. So over there, even though in general, when you get the death penalty, you do not pay, but when it comes to a knas situation, in those situations, even if you get the death penalty, you're going to pay the money as well. And so the Gemara now asks, according to that, Masnisin Kaman Mukim Lo. According to that, which Tana are you going to say is the Tana of our Mishnah here in Kesubos? Ika Rabbi Meir. If you're going to say it's the Tana of Rabbi Meir, and Rashi will explain all of this, but if it is like Rabbi Meir, Kasha Bito, then we're not going to understand what our Mishnah says in a situation where a person rapes his daughter. Our Mishnah over there actually says that the person is pater from Tashlumin, but it's a Knas. You should have to pay in such a situation. Ika Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. If you're going to follow the position of Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, again, Rashi will explain. Kasha Chosa, then you're going to have a difficulty in the case of his sister, where it's not a death penalty administered by Bezin, but there it's a kares situation. So then again, in such a situation of a kares situation, our Mishnah says the person does pay. That's not going to work, according to Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. And Ika Rabbi Yitzchak, and if it follows Rabbi Yitzchak, Kasha Mamzeres, you're going to have a similar question when it comes to the case of raping a Mamzeres. And Rashi over here explains, L'Rabba de Amar l'Rabbi Meir Chidushu. Again, Rabba was the one that said that according to Rabbi Meir, by Knas, we do say that the person pays the money. Masnisin Kaman Mukim. Who are we going to say is the author of our Mishnah? L'shanuye rumya de Raminan Allah de Elohen Alokin. Again, we had an original contradiction between our Mishnah and the Mishnah in Malkus, which talks about the fact v'kai malon de ein loka mishalim. There it says you can't get Malkus and also pay. And over here you have situations, the situations of onus where you're paying money, even though presumably there should have been Malkus. That was the original question we asked, and so we had various answers to that question. So Ika Rabbi Meir, let's say you're going to say that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Meir. That was one of the answers we gave. Diyamar Loka Mishalim, we said that Rabbi Meir has a shita that you could get Malkus and pay, and maybe he's the author of our Mishnah in Kesubos. Uchidashaninu Reish Lakish, that was the answer of Reish Lakish. So then you're going to have a problem if you're going to go according to Rabbah, because Kasha Bito, you have a problem from the case of the daughter. Why? Because it's all good according to Reish Lakish, who simply says our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. Because he'll say that brisa we quoted earlier about stealing and slaughtering on Shabbos, so you didn't actually violate Shabbos. He'll say someone else did the slaughtering, and if you would have actually violated Shabbos, so then you'd actually be pater from the payment. If he himself did the shchita on Shabbos and violated Shabbos and got the death penalty, he wouldn't pay. So you'd have a simple answer. Lo kasha, there'd be no difficulty. Demeisu mashalim, less like the Rabbi Meir, because you would say that in a case where there's the death penalty involved, then you don't have to pay money, according to Rabbi Meir, afilu b'knas, even by a situation of a knas, even by a situation of a fine. In other words, there's no problem by the case of Bito. There it involves an actual death penalty administered by Bezdin, and in such a situation, you would not pay money. Ela Rabba kasha, but if you're going to follow Rabba that by a fine, you do pay the money, and Rashi referenced this earlier when we mentioned Rabba. Rashi said that we were going to ask this question. According to Rabba, it's difficult. Bito de knasu, because the case of the daughter is a death penalty and it's a knas. V'katani masnisin pater, and again, the Mishnah in Kesubos says that you're pater in such a case. So according to Rabba, you're not going to be able to fit the Mishnah according to Rabbi Meir. V'ika Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. Now we have another Tana that's a possibility. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. The Islainami loka mishalim ke Rabbi Meir. He happens to hold like Rabbi Meir that you can get malchus and pay money. That would explain the cases where you do pay for the onus. Midakamar Yom HaKippurim kashabis Yom HaKippurim hu the pater mitashlumin umishum kares deispe. Now the thing is, Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana says by Yom Kippur it's like Shabbos, and Yom Kippur, since there is kares, you don't pay money. There you're pater from tashlumin. Umigzer shava de asan. He learns that out from the gzer shav of asan. Avol misham lav umalkus de ispe lo pater. But if you have a situation of malkus, that's not enough to pater you from paying. Umasnisa nami dislay loka mishalim dideu, and you'll say our Mishnah which says you can get malkus and pay. That's Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. Umeisu mishalim lesle afilu b'knas, and then you'll say that Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana holds that if there's a death penalty involved, even by a knas situation, you do not pay. But the problem is, if you're going to say it's Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, kasha chosa, we have a problem in the case of the sister. Nihi nami de mishum malkus lo pater, because granted the malkus is not going to pater from payment, but lived mishum kares. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana again says that kares is enough to pater you from payment, so you're still going to have a problem in the case of achoso where there is kares. And finally, the last Tana that's a possibility, V'ikar Rabbi Yitzchak, if you're going to say that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yitzchak, Tuk Madamar Meseches Makos Ein Chayve Krisos Bechlal Malkus Mem. He's the one that says that when you have kares, you don't get malchus for kares situations. Velesle hai de Elohen alokin. He doesn't hold of that mission of all those cases of malchus. So habal achosu misham hachi chayavim etashlumin. And you'll say, therefore, since there is no malchus, that's why you're chayav to pay, because he holds there is no malchus in kares cases. But then kasha mamzeres. Then you're still gonna have a question from the case of a mamzeres. Tahakol modim shuba malchus. Everybody agrees that mamzeres actually does get malchus. V'katani is laknas, and it says by mamzeres there is the payment over there for the person is ma'anis if a person rapes a mamzeres, and therefore that's going to be a problem because there is malchus. And why is it that you're going to have that payment? And the Gemara continues, Hanicho Isavar like Rabbi Yochanan. Now, it is going to be good if you say that Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yochanan. Hunami metaretz like Rabbi Yochanan. You can always answer up our mission over here in Kesubos like Rabbi Yochanan. Simply say there is no malchus because there was no warning for malchus. Rabbi Yochanan holds if there's no actual malchus administered, so then you have to pay. Rashi says, Hanicho Isavar Rabbi Rabbi Yochanan kishelo hisrubo de mishalim. If Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yochanan that when there's no warning you pay money, the chayve malchus shogegin v'davar acher chayev. That if you're chayev malchus but it was done b'shogeg, so there is no malchus, so then there's davar acher. If there's a monetary payment, you're chayiv. So you nami muki l'masisim b'shalo hisru Rabbi Yochanan. He can simply say our mission is talking where there was no warning, like Rabbi Yochanan. That's what can happen according to that. Again, isavar like Rabbi Yochanan, hu nami mitarz like Rabbi Yochanan. Elo isavar kareish lakish. However, if he holds like Reish Lakish, then in any case, whether the malchus is administered or not, you're going to be pater from payment. Heichi mitarz la. We're back to our question: how exactly is Rava going to understand our Mishnah? And to that, the Gemara says, Al you're right. You have to say that Rabbi follows Rabbi Yochanan. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Masna le Abaya. Rav Masna said to Abaya, Le Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, Diamar beferish rib satora chayve malkias ke chayve misas. He's the one that says that when it comes to chayve malkias, they're treated exactly like chayve misas, and there's a patur from Tashlumin. As Rashi over here says, Le Reish Lakish, Damar beferish rib satora de chayve malkias shogegin patur milashalim. That even if it's a situation of shogeg where there is no actual malchus administered, you're going to be pater from paying. So according to Reish Lakish, who says that, so the Gemara says, Man Tana de Poligoled Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. Who is the Tana who is then going to argue on Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana? Rashi will explain. And the Gemara says, I Rabbi Meir, I Rabbi Yitzchak. It can be either Rabbi Meir or it can be Rabbi Yitzchak. And Rashi over here says, Man Tana de Poligoled Rabbi Nechunya. Who's the Tana that argues on Rabbi Nechunya? It means to say, Umechayev Tashlumin b'chayve krisus. Meaning to say, Rabbi Nechunya was the one that says that by chayve krisus you don't have to pay money. But there are Tanaim that argue with Rabbi Nechunya. They say you do have to pay money even in cases of chayve krisus. Kagona he the shvuas v'shehidlik gadish b'yom ha'kippurim chayavin b'perek shvuas ha'edus. There are various cases in Mishnayos, in other Mesechtas. Umasnizan dehacha dekansa ba'achoso, or also our Mishnah over here, which talks about the fine that you pay when he's with his sister, when he rapes his sister. Unehinami delesle ason lemifterei misham kares. Granted that Tana says that kares is not enough, doesn't hold of the ason to say that the kares patters from payment. Lifterei misham lav bein hisrubo bein lo hisrubo de ein kares below lav, but the lav in which there is malchus over here, whether there was a warning or whether there was not a warning according to Reish Lakish, that's the problem. Anytime there's a lav, anytime there's theoretical malchus, there should be a patur from payment. Chutz mi Pesach u'Mila, except Pesach and Mila, the only cases of a situation of kares where there's no lav, but every other case, it's a situation of a lav, a negative commandment, and it's a case of kares, should automatically also have at least a theoretical malchus, whether you're administering the malchus or not, and all of those cases should be patur from paying because of the malchus, but it doesn't say that. We find in these various Mishnayos that there's no kares, and we say that in these cases, or rather we say in these cases of kares, that's not enough to pater, that you still have to pay, even though, according to Reish Lakish, the malchus component, the lav component, should pater from paying. The Bishalam Rabbi Yochanan. Now Rashi explains. I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, meaning not Reish Lakish. Muki la afilu k'Rabbanan. It's very simple. All of these Mishnayos you can say follow the Rabbanan. The Pligi Oled Rabbi Meir, the Amri Ein Loka Mishalim. They're the ones that say that in general you don't get malchus and pay, but it's not a problem. V'hani b'shalo hisrubo ela l'Reish Lakish kaman muki la. You'll just simply say there was no warning over there. So if there's no warning, there's no actual malchus, and that's why you pay money. But according to Reish Lakish, even a theoretical malchus patters you from money. So all of these various Mishnayos again, which talk about paying money where there is a lav involved, shouldn't that be a case of theoretical malchus, and you should always be pater? And so the Gemara answered, well, we can answer as follows. Rabbi Meir, either you'll have to say that Reish Lakish will always attribute these various Mishnayos to Rabbi Meir's opinion. To Amar Loka Mishalim, he's the one that says you could get Malkus and pay. That would be one way to answer all these Mishnayos. Rabbi Yitzchak, the other way is to say that it follows Rabbi Yitzchak. The Amar Lo Shayich Malkus B'chayve Krisus. Rabbi Yitzchak happens to hold, like we said just above, that there is no Malkus by Chayve Krisus. That's his Shita. Ugzer Shava da Asan Asan Leslie doesn't have that Gzer Shava. Uvamai Lifter, therefore there's nothing to pater. Hilkach, and now Rashi therefore says as follows. Hilkach, therefore, Masnizan Dahacha. Now our Mishnah over here, which talks about the cases of rape, Al Karchach Rabbi Meir Hivalo Rabbi Yitzchak. That you have to say is Rabbi Meir. You can't resort to Rabbi Yitzchak over there. Misham Dekasha Mamzeres, because as we've said on Rabbi Yitzchak, you always have the question from Mamzeres where everyone agrees there is Malkus. So you have to say it's following Rabbi Meir. That's Loka Mishalim. Avalahi the Shavuos Bein Rabbi Meir Bein Rabbi Yitzchak. But the other Mishnah is, let's say in Shavuos, that can be whether like Rabbi Meir or whether like Rabbi Yitzchak. That is what Reish Lakish will have to say. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Arayos or Shnios la Arayos. Let's say you have a case of Arayos, meaning women who are forbidden because they're relatives, or Shnios la Arayos. Now the Gemara will explain exactly what we mean here by Arayos and Shnios la Arayos. But Ein lohen lo knas velo pitoy. In those situations, they do not receive the knas payment. Let's say they were raped, and they do not receive the seduction payment, the pitoy payment. Let's say they were seduced. Hamima'enes. Let's say you have a woman who is a mima'enes. That is a girl who was married off. It's a marriage midrabanan. She is a girl who does not have a father. Her father died, and so her mother or her brother married her off. So the halacha is she's allowed to refuse the marriage. And so therefore, if she does refuse the marriage, ein lo lo knas v'lo pitoy. Again, if she gets raped or seduced, she doesn't get the payment, the fine payment, or the seduction payment. Islandess, let's say you have a sexually underdeveloped woman. Ein lo lo knas v'lo pitoy. She also does not receive those payments. V'hayotzis mishum shem ra. Let's say you have a woman who she was divorced from her husband because of a shem ra, meaning to say he said that he found that she wasn't a basula, and therefore he sent her out from the marriage. Ein lo lo knas v'lo pitoy. She also does not receive, if she is raped or seduced, she does not receive those payments. And the Gemara says, Maya arayos umay shnios la arayos. Turning our attention to the first part of this price over here, what does it mean arayos and shnios la arayos? Ilema arayos, if you're going to say it means actual arayos. And we'll take a look at Rashi over here. Arayos or shnios lekamon mefarish lu. Again, the Gemara will explain what arayos and shnios la arayos means in this context. Kenas da'anusa pitoy de mefuta. Again, the kenas is what's paid to the woman who's raped. The pitoy is what's paid to the woman who is seduced. Hamima enes. So then we had a case of a woman who refuses bebala. She refuses her marriage. She's a minor. Kagon yesoma ketana shesiyasa imo miana bebala. For example, again, she was orphaned. She doesn't have a father. Her mother married her off, and then there's a concept of miyun. She's allowed to refuse the marriage. So ein la knas. She doesn't receive the knas payment. Why? She'ena becheskas besula. However, since she was a married woman, she does not have a presumption of being a besula, and the knas payment is for a besula. Islandist, again, that's a sexually underdeveloped woman. She'ein la simone narus liolam. She never gets those signs of being a nara. Ve'ena yoledis, and she's not able to give birth. Lashon ayel zachar duchanisa de lo yalda. The word islandist comes from the idea of a male animal, a male ram, which of course doesn't give birth because it is a male, so she's called an islandist because she does not give birth. Ein la knas lefi she'ein knas ela lenara. Again, she doesn't receive the knas payment because knas applies specifically to a nara, which is a woman who has the signs of maturity in those first 6 months until she becomes a full adult, a bogeris. Vizusha lo tavi saros liolam. When you have an islandist who never has those hairs of maturity, kol chaf shana hi becheskas ketana. So for her first 20 years of life, she's called a ketana. Umisham va'elach bogeris, and from there on, she's a bogeris. She never has that nara period, and therefore she doesn't receive these payments. V'hayotzis mishum shemra. And again, a woman who was divorced from her husband because of the fact that it seems she wasn't a basula when she was supposed to be a basula. Right now we think it means to say that the husband did not find that she was a basula. It seems that she committed adultery. The Gemara is going to ask later on, what are you bringing this case for? In this case, she's actually supposed to be getting skila. In such a situation, she should be put to death, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph.